The guy joining us on the line right now, I have a lot of respect and admiration for. He is on the right side of history. He has called out Donald Trump over and over again, and rightfully so. And he has supported Kamala Harris as a lifelong Republican. It is certainly a pleasure to have former Representative Adam Kinzinger joining us on the show right now, that is campaigning for Kamala Harris all over the country, including the state of Nevada. Mr. Kinzinger, really an honor to have you on the show. Thank you so much for being here.
It's good. It's good to be with you. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Thank you. I appreciate you being here. I want to start with you from square one in the short time we have, and I appreciate you being here. What was the final straw for you where you said, I cannot vote for this man? Was it January 6th? Was it way before January 6th where you said, that's it, I've had it? What was the final straw for you?
Yeah, I mean, look, I was always kind of, I would say, of Republicans, the most resistant to him. You know, I would be the most likely to call him out. But, you know, you have to survive. And unfortunately, you've seen people that have made kind of the ultimate sacrifices to do this. But, you know, it's like, okay, well, I guess I got to swallow my pride on some of this stuff. But look, the night of the election, when he said, stop the count, they're stealing the vote. Look, I love foreign policy and I love America's role in the world and talking about that. And I recognize that, you know, self-governance, like if you have somebody, particularly with authority, trying to undermine an election system, trying to say like they're stealing it, they're stealing your vote, right? Your vote doesn't count. It is, man, it's not a long time until you see violence from that. So when he started to say that, and I realized that he was really crossing a red line of undermining democracy, that's when it's like, look, there is no job, no title or anything that is worth me being a party to that.
Right. You know, and Mr. Kinzinger, over the last few years, when you have been on the right side of history, I'm just wondering, some of your Republican colleagues over the last few years, the private conversation, have you had any of those conversations with like a Matt Gaetz or a Marjorie Taylor Greene? I mean, very difficult to talk to those people, I'm sure, but what are those private conversations like? Are they productive at all?
Well, like I never talked to the Matt Gaetz or Greens. I mean, because like that's just like a waste of my time, and I've got other things to do. But you know what's crazy, and you know, and I guess I don't even know the answer anymore to do they really believe this stuff, or is this just an act? I mean, Marjorie Taylor Greene today tweeted like, "Don't let them convince you they can't control the weather." What world have we stepped into? Like what? Who's they, by the way? You know, we could go whole thing. But the thing that most disappointed me, and particularly during the January 6th stuff, was the number of Republicans that would come up to me and say, Adam, thanks for doing what you're doing. I appreciate it. I can't do it because I'll lose my race, but thank you for doing that. It's like, look, so I wear on my wrist name of my buddy who was killed in Iraq. And I'm like, if we're going to ask people to die for this country, which, you know, we have to have, it's a sad reality. If we're going to ask people to die for this country, shouldn't we be willing to give up our job for the country? Particularly when somebody so unqualified as Donald Trump is there? The answer, I think, should be yes. But, you know,
and I'm sorry. And I'm sorry to hear about your friend. What would you say to those brave men and women, some of whom are still going to be supporting Donald Trump after what the comments he made about John McCain, the suckers and losers statement, which I'm sure you believe he said? I certainly do. I believe General Milley and General Kelly. Like what would you say to those who serve this country who are voting for Donald Trump? What would you say to them?
I mean, look, what can I say that hasn't been said? I don't know, except to remind them of this. You know, there's always kind of been a tradition where most military members have voted Republican, particularly in the officer ranks. It was always like 80-20 among officers. And then the enlisted was a little more split even. And I think there's this belief that there's still this vestige of people that believe the old Republican Party is still out there somewhere. Like maybe it's just underneath Donald Trump. And when Donald Trump loses, the old GOP is going to come back and they really are the hawkish pro-American party. So what I say to those people that, you know, I do talk to in the military still that are for Trump is like, sorry, that party may have the same name, but it's gone. And in fact, when I spoke to the DNC, one of the things that the Democratic National Convention, one of the things that impressed me was the amount of the real depth of like patriotism there. So this idea that the Republican Party, and I think that's what used to attract so many military members, it's the party of patriotism. Right. Look, the Republican Party today, and let's say Donald Trump generally, all he says is how terrible America is. Like, how is that any pride? Maybe you have pride in what your vision of America in the past was, but America today you hate. You say that every day. So that's the best thing I could say to military members is like, look, there's more at stake, but I think this is going to take some time to kind of convince people and get them to realize the old party's gone.
Mr. Kinzinger, this is a loaded question, and I started by saying, geez, what happened to your party? But when people would ask me 10, 15, I'm an independent, but when people would ask me 10, 15 years ago what your party stood for, while I didn't always agree with everything, I had an answer for it. Now, when people ask me what the Republican Party stands for, I think of banning books, attacking transgenders, attacking drag queens, worried about which people are going into which bathrooms, no answers when it comes to gun control, no answers when it comes to a replacement plan for Obamacare, concepts of like, what happened to your party? I have no idea what the Republican Party stands for today.
Yeah, I don't either. And, here's what I would say. If it stands for one thing, it's this. It's attaining power, and it's using culture wars and fear and division and anger to attain power. So sure, there are members of the Republican Party that may believe in something in some end state, particularly of the voters, but of the politicians, look, those folks are long gone. And if you still survive in the GOP, you've basically had to become malleable to whatever the moment is to make it through your primary. I think the party simply stands for using rage and using division to attain power. Is it for lower taxes? You could argue that, but who cares at this point? Is it a conservative economic policy? Well, I don't think there's anything conservative about the Republican Party. There really isn't. Is it standing against Russia? Well, no, because they would throw Russia a bone and throw Ukraine under the bus. So I don't know what the party stands for anymore, to be honest with you.
Yeah, it's a pretty honest answer you just gave me. You had to have known, Mr. Kinzinger, that when you decided to be on the right side of history and be honest with the American people and call out Donald Trump for who he is, you had to have known the Republican Party was going to ostracize you, for lack of a better term, to do to you what they did to Liz Cheney. You had to have known that, right, when you decided to make this choice.
Yeah, look, I guess it was always my hope that everybody would wake up, right, and say, gosh, it went too far. So, but I knew it would cost me everything. And look, I've got a 2.5-year-old son. So when I made these decisions, he was still, in my wife's belly. But I just remember thinking, if I need to, someday I've got to talk to him about honor. I've got to talk to him about doing the right thing. I've got to talk to him about truth. And he can Google my name. He'll Google my name and be like, well, Dad, that was a great conversation, but I see that basically you absolutely capitulated to Donald Trump when it was obvious you should have done something else. And I couldn't live with that, and I couldn't live with knowing, again, what so many generations have given to make this country, that all of a sudden I'm going to say, well, that sacrifice ends with me. And I'm going to be the one now that just, is in this for myself. I guess what surprised me more than anything is I never thought it would be just two of us. I thought everybody in politics had a red line they wouldn't cross. Sadly, that's not true. And that's why this election is so important. I could care less about policy differences anymore. And especially at this moment, are there things like Kamala and I disagree on? Sure, I'm sure. But I know she loves democracy. I know she's actually optimistic. She cares about the future of this country. And I know her opponent has basically made it clear that he will burn this place down if it makes him look good.
Pretty clear you're choosing your country over your party. And I would call you a patriot for that and a man of honor, and you have a moral compass. I'm curious, what would be your message to even a guy like a JD Vance, who you know personally, who is on a debate stage and won't even answer the question, who won the 2020 election? You were on that January 6th commission. Obviously, this is near and dear to your heart, democracy. What do you make of JD Vance in front of millions of people, not even able to answer that question or willing to?
Well, it's pathetic. And what you learn in the GOP is the only way to survive. Look, let's look at Liz Cheney and I. It's not like we changed our policy views. So why are we not welcome in the party? It's not because we're huge raging liberals now or anything. It's because we won't bow the knee to Donald Trump. Literally, that is the only cost of entry. You don't even have to believe conservative things. The party's not conservative. So what would I say to JD Vance? I think I would look at him in the face and call him pathetic and tell him he has no moral center. He has no understanding. And someday his family is going to be ashamed. Because, look, I really believe this. In 10 years, and I don't blame people that are voting for Donald Trump today because he's abused them, he's lied and manipulated them to convince them of certain things. But I think in 10 years, there's not going to be a single soul in the United States of America that will ever admit they voted for him. because I think his name will be seen as a stain on this country. I hope so, because I think that's frankly the only way this country will be saved.
Yep. A couple more quick questions for you. We appreciate you coming on, former Rep Adam Kinzinger, joining us on the show. Two-part question, loaded question here for you. Number one, what goes through your mind when the former president of the United States, Donald Trump, puts your name in the mud, you and Liz Cheney? He's said a lot of negative things about you, virtually anybody who disagrees with him. And number two, if you were in a private room with Donald Trump, I'm curious, what would you say to him?
What would I say or do? Okay. Look, what would I say to him if it was just him and I sitting at the table? I'd probably say similar to what I would say to JD Vance, which is like, you're a disgrace. And I guess what I'm curious about is, when you make the presidency, you're obviously a historical figure by default. There's only been 46 of you or 47 of you. Why in the world do you not care about what your legacy is? And do you really think you're going to have a good legacy? Because you won't. Like, there's no world, even if Donald Trump wins again, there's no world that Donald Trump, the history books will write, was an amazing president. That just won't happen. He's so divisive. I guess that's what, and what is it like to get attacked by him? I mean, the very first time you're kind of like, oh boy, here we go, right? I'm gonna have all these texts from these people that I know, and yeah, that happened. But now I consider it a badge of honor, because he doesn't go after you if you're not a threat. If you're a threat, he freaks out, and if he's freaking out on me, it means I'm getting under his skin. And I happen to know that I get under his skin personally. And because he really wanted me to be a Donald Trump supporter. He's told me that before. And so, yeah, whenever he comes after me, it just reminds me that I'm doing the right thing. And I feel like a team member of the pro-democracy team.
Similar question for you when it comes to just Republicans in general. What would you say to some of your former Republican colleagues that behind closed doors, they know who Donald Trump is? They know he has no moral compass, but yet publicly, they're not willing to say that, and they're still going to vote for him, knowing what a threat he is, probably because many of them just want to remain in power.
Yeah.
What do you say to those people? I'm just curious.
Yeah. So look, our policy differences, we've argued the same crap for 100 years, right? We've argued taxes, we've argued guns, we've argued abortion, all that stuff. We've argued for 100 years. We're going to argue that in 100 years, if we're lucky. But there's only very brief moments in time in your life where you get a chance to do something where you stand against the crowd and you can make yourself proud and you can make an impact. One chance. And that's in everybody's life, by the way, not just politics, but in politics, one chance comes along and you have an opportunity to either blow that or be honorable. And that's what I would say to them. Look, in 5 years, probably 2 years for some of them, you're not going to be in power anymore. Are you going to want to look back and say you're proud of what you did with that moment that God gave you in politics? Or do you want to look back and say that you squealed away because you were scared that you would get a tweet against you? And look, if that's your fear, fine. That's a legitimate fear. You're in the wrong job. Go make some more money, do something else, but don't go into politics because your district is begging you to do the right thing because they need to look up to you for that answer.
Mr. Kinzinger, I want to give you the opportunity real quickly before we let you go to talk about Kamala Harris, but I guess I want to give you a two-part question here.
Mm-hmm.
One about Trump, one is about Harris. Number one, what is your biggest concern if Donald Trump gets back into the White House in November? And the second part of that question is, what is the most positive attribute of many that I'm sure that you would give Kamala Harris and why you're supporting her? So two-part question there.
Yeah, the biggest threat I fear with Donald Trump, and look, I'd love to say it's some economic thing or whatever, and it is, because I think he doesn't care. The collapse of Ukraine, I think will be a stain on our history if we allow Ukraine to collapse when they could basically defeat the Russians. But the biggest thing, to be honest with you, I don't know how we ever return to a semblance of self-governance where we're putting competent people in place when a carnival barker continues to win re-election. We are teaching that next generation of Americans that we don't need honorable people in politics because they've never seen it. We're teaching them that you just have to be the most entertaining, loudest, most divisive, most aggressive person who takes people with skin color that's darker and points to them as the enemy. And I think self-governance will struggle to survive under this. Self-governance is really delicate. It really is. We realize that now. And my favorite attribute about Kamala is just her understanding that America is a country of differences. And she's made it very clear, and you got to take people at their word. She wants to unite this country. It doesn't mean you agree with her, but she wants to be a president for all Americans and bring the temperature down. I just don't think American political class can continue, and the American people can continue to sit here baking in this temperature and expect things to be okay without it turning to violence or to permanent disfigurement. And Kamala Harris has been, look, I was on the other side of the Democrats in 2008. I was a McCain guy, but we felt a certain energy with Obama that I feel with Kamala Harris. And it's a positive, optimistic energy.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. I want to give you the opportunity. I know you're in Nevada. Any events that you want to promote, or what do you plan on doing here in Nevada? Could you share with us?
Yeah, for me, it's a fairly quick trip, and I'm leaving soon. But I was meeting with some of the labor and trade unions here to talk about, the importance of obviously unions. I was a very pro-union Republican, and the importance of unions for Kamala Harris. And so I expect I'll probably be back in Nevada in the next week or two anyway, because I'm going to be traveling around a lot. Cool. You guys are important, by the way.
Well, I appreciate that. I try to, I'm very anti-Donald Trump, but I'm an independent and I care about our democracy just as much as you do. And before you let you go, I just want to say this. I appreciate you for what you've done. We need people like you and Liz Cheney. While we might not agree on everything, if Donald Trump does lose in November, make no mistake about it, it's going to be in part because of people like you and Liz Cheney. So I have a ton of admiration for you. You have a lot of courage. You have a beautiful family. Please keep up the great work. We need more people like you in this country, my friend. And Mr. Kinzinger, I appreciate you coming on. Love to have you on again before the elections. Thank you.
Yeah, I'd love to. God bless you, man. Appreciate it. Thanks, everybody. And I'm looking forward to coming back.
Appreciate it. Thank you, Mr. Kinzinger. That's Adam Kinzinger, everybody. Former rep. Great guy. I genuinely mean everything I just said about him. I have a lot of admiration for him. I have a ton of respect for him. Again, when you're willing to put your country before your party, you are a hero. You are a true patriot. Donald Trump calls the patriots the people who stormed the Capitol. No, Adam Kinzinger is a patriot.